everyone. My name is Bernal. I'm here to talk about liberty. The reason I'm here to talk about liberty and the reason why I wrote my paper on liberty is because I personally feel as if liberties are only given ammunition for protection in this country. We fought for liberty, we fought for freedom to come here, we fought to build this nation upon those ideals. With new technology coming out and more laws being passed and more things occurring in the world, I think there's a fear factor that is being brought upon everybody by our federal government and our leaders, which is straining our liberties. And the reason I'm saying that is due to things like the National Defense Act, things like the Patriot Act, and just the whole terrorism fight and, I guess, technological battle we're having with our privacy. People like my parents, they don't mind very much if you have a National Defense Act and they're reading your emails or they're listening to your phone calls, because in their eyes they're not doing anything wrong. They're talking about going to the store or just talking to me or whoever, but in my eyes that's not the point. The point is you shouldn't punish the masses for a certain event brought upon a foreign attack or by foreign affairs. And I read a really nice short essay by John Stuart Mill called On Liberty, and he gave a lot of good points about liberty and what it means to him and the struggle between the government and the governed since the beginning. What does it mean to have liberty, and why is it important to me, and why it should be important to everybody is the fact that your freedom is all you have. And when you take that away, it's almost like you're suffocating and you're watching every move and you're categorizing yourself with people who are harming the country or who are not doing the right thing, even when you're doing the right things all the time. Society's always created fundamental beliefs through multiple venues of manipulation in order to achieve a certain order needed to control the governed, so that we feel as if protection can only come from the government or from our leaders, which is not true. Things that have occurred in the last year or two, I'm sure everyone knows Edward Snowden and him releasing the CIA documents of their basically watching everybody's every move online. And I think that's a little ridiculous that what they would call a traitor, had to leave the country and take asylum in another country because he wanted to let the people know, like, hey, this is wrong, and it's invading your privacy and you should worry about it. I think the problem is that there's a lot going on in the world right now. Media kind of takes your mind off what's important, which is being a citizen dedicated to understanding your rights and your beliefs and being able to live freely and pursue happiness in your own way. Federal courts have ruled that a number of provisions are unconstitutional of the Patriot Act. Title II established three very controversial provisions: sneak peek warrants, roving wiretaps, and the ability of the FBI to gain access to documents that reveal the patterns of U.S. citizens. I don't know if you've noticed, but on Facebook sometimes you'll see advertisements along the side and they'll pertain to your likes and what it is that you search on Google. That is a part of it, and that is scary to me because in one day I looked up something about like some Nike running shoes. The very next day it had an advertisement saying the newest Nike free runs coming out then, and kind of freaked me out because I searched a lot of things about the Patriot Act and a lot of things about liberty and the CIA, so I'm sure they put me on their little list, which is cool. It's cool. It's fine with me. I don't care. But there is also a couple things that have happened in the last couple of years, and specifically recently, which is, I don't know if you've heard of Bundy Ranch. It's a huge standoff that was happening between the government and Clive Bundy, whose family owned the ranch that he has since like the 1800s. And there's a group called the BLM, and they're a federal group, and what they do is they manage land basically and mostly on the western part of the United States. So what their objective is to come in and basically take your land and say, hey, we're going to own this and we're going to rent it out to you, and you'll pay us money for us allowing you to use your own land that you've owned for years. And the standoff lasted for like a week, but the problem is the attack that they brought upon Bundy Ranch. They herded all of his cattle, they shot and killed his cattle, they threw them in ditches, they destroyed water tanks and land, structures there that help provide livestock with the things that they need to survive and for him to, continue to farm and be a cattleman. And he's a good citizen. He's providing beef to the country. He owes them $1 million from not paying him or paying the BLM for 20 years. But the reason he decided not to do so is because it is his land and those are his cattle, and he is doing a good service for the country. But just the fact that there was an attack brought upon animals to give a message and put their foot down and say, hey, we're gonna do it like this, and you don't have an option, to me is kind of crazy. I believe the federal government has plenty of money, and I think $1 million from one guy is not going to change a whole lot about their bank account. And I've been following that a lot, and I want to compare that to like Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was like an ideological victory for Americans. There wasn't like a regime change. There wasn't very much that came from that as compared to Bundy Ranch and them bearing arms constitutionally and defeating the government. The Occupy Wall Street ordeal, it was a good mindset. It was a good thing to go after. Obviously, it was about social inequality and the 99% and everything, which everybody definitely knows about. But it didn't really do much. There were a lot of people basically camping out, destroying things, not necessarily going about it the right way. And the reason I compare those two is because of the victory Bundy Ranch had and what it has done for people in America and how they showed that if you're not afraid to stand up to government, that you can defeat government and you can take on your liberties and you can be respected, that's the point. Occupy caused a lot of controversy, and like I said, it wasn't much of a victory in compared to Bundy Ranch, but this standoff, I think, is going to ignite a movement within people in this country to take a good hard look at what has been going on for the last decade, probably 2 decades. I'm only 23 years old, so I don't know much about the first decade, in the 90s, and the Patriot, and liberties being taken away then. But I found something to be very interesting about all these things that are happening with our liberties and the way that they're kind of stripping them away piece by piece. It's strange. Everybody has their own ideas about 9/11, and everybody has their own thoughts about what happened then. But the ending result of that is we are now going to censor, and we are now going to look and obtain all the information from everybody because of this one attack. And it's just the privacy factor of it. You don't want people, or you don't want government, you don't want a group to look at what you're doing all the time, even if you're not doing anything wrong. And I think that with that being said, we should have more focus as the next generation to stand up for our liberties and to really pursue being free. And it's not as if we're in jail or that our country is terrible or that it's a battle we're not going to win, but it is important. And as time progresses, I feel as if technology and laws are going to just basically be combined. And I think that it's not fair to, like I said, punish the group for things that happen outside of America or happen to America from somebody outside. The thing that I wanted to touch on a lot, or that I touched on a lot in my paper, is where does authority begin in society alongside the sovereignty of the individual? Where's the balance? Where does it stop? When is it that we should put our foot down and say, we don't want you listening to our phone calls or our emails, or and the thing about it is it's the fear factor. Like I said, we feel as if we need to be protected, and so we give into those things and we allow those things to happen, and they kind of happen quickly. And lobbying is a huge factor in a lot of those laws being passed. But revolting, protesting, and fighting for our freedoms it's not wrong. It's not crazy. It's actually what we've done our entire lifespan of being America with civil rights and women's suffrage, and we've always done it, and it's important. And it's vital that we look at it that way, and that we expect that of ourselves, to have, I guess, a more appropriate approach to it, similar to the Bundy Ranch ordeal. Them bearing arms against the government, standing up for their right, saying we're not going to allow you to completely take this over and just tell us what to do, is kind of the mentality I think a lot of people need to have now. And like I said, there's a lot going on. There's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's American Idol, there's all types of distractions that the media and that just TV in general feeds us. And those things are great, my mom watches the heck out of American Idol. But at the same time, it takes your mind off of those ideas and how important liberty is and how things are changing pretty rapidly. And just in the last, like I said, 2 decades, we've had 2 acts passed, the National Defense Act and the Patriot Act, that have stripped rights and are unconstitutional in many ways. And it's strange to me that it just occurs and it happens and that we haven't changed it. But everybody wants a piece of society, and everybody who's in society expects to, or is expected to contribute, but they expect protection, law enforcement, your right to trial, and we don't want to lose those things. And in the National Defense Act, if they decide that you are a threat, you will be taken into custody, and there is no right to trial. It's done, which is not, that's crazy. That's crazy talk. But with all those things being said, everyone should be able to live freely. Everyone should feel as if they're not being spied on. They shouldn't feel as if their privacy is being, barged in on. And I really hope that as time progresses, more people will want to be involved with things like Bundy Ranch and support movements for liberty and for America and for Americans. But society will find their own mandates for how things work. We as people and individuals will find a way to say that something is either okay or it's not. Like child abuse. Obviously, after a while, individuals realize, hey, it's not okay. So we as a society branded that. And I think that privacy and liberty should be taken with that same idea, but but to be appreciated more by us is basically what my concern is. Sorry, I want to find something really quickly. But I was watching a Fox News interview with Bill O'Reilly. Interesting guy. And he asked what the difference was between Bundy and Occupy was. And I thought this is really interesting, since they're both dissenters. And I think that it's funny that they use that word for people who are doing the right thing. And a militiaman from the Bundy ordeal said that Mr. Bundy was providing service to the nation, and that we still don't know what the Occupy movement was for. But people do know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And, news outlets are corporately owned. They have a lot of money. And I think it's important for everybody to conduct their own research and become aware of your rights and really look at these acts that have been passed and think about whether you want your kids to be subjected to something like that in the future, or for more things to come and for more liberties to be stripped. And like I said, hopefully those things won't happen, and I appreciate you listening. So.